Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, coming to you as always from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley. Joining me, as always, is, well, my handsome host. That would be over here. Am I pointing the right way? And of course, also joining us today, our other co-host.
We should do the whole show like that.
Yes, the whole show.
I'm gonna breathe in this thing. It smells like an eraser.
That's the Patreon episode. It's just all in Sharrook.
Yes, yes. A bunch of people going, "What? No." You'd have half the audience going, "What in the world?" The other half would be going, "Yes!"
What in the holiday and actually a third of the audience would be complaining about our pronunciation.
Yeah.
Right?
That is one thing I really of the things I love about our fandom. I have some pictures of a flight simulator I used to work on that has a Star Destroyer in the simulator environment. And I made a pretty nice picture of me flying alongside the Star Destroyer. And every time I post it, someone will tell me that the Imperator class Star Destroyer would not operate that way inside of a planetary atmosphere. Like, thank you for the most Star Wars response. I love it. At any rate, nice to see you guys.
Good to see you too, because you said you weren't going to be able to join us, but now you are.
We briefly had plans. I was actually kind of holding off to see if they fell through. I let you guys know I couldn't make it when it didn't look like they were going to fall through, and they fell through.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love my family.
Okay, I have a quick question before we get into the meat of the discussion. Did you two coordinate your T-shirts?
Not at all. This is a happy accident.
Because that is. Of course, I always have to ask the question: how do you guys pronounce it?
AT-AT.
I say AT-AT.
It's interchangeable for me, but
yeah, I know there's a lot of people that will get so upset if you say AT-AT.
Well, you know what? They can at me on Instagram.
Because they say you don't say atst. They'll say, well, you don't say atst. Like, yeah, because that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That doesn't even sound right.
It's ease of language. It's not a technicality. But honestly, I had an AT-AT toy when it first came out with The Empire Strikes Back, so I claim seniority and I can pronounce it how I want.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like if they come and at me on Instagram, I will kick their ats all over the social media platforms.
That's good. My wife has seen too many pictures of me wearing this shirt in a selfie where it's reversed, so she calls it Tata. The Imperial Tatas, as she likes to say.
Oh my gosh! Wow. You know, that reminds me. I saw one of those little clips on YouTube where it's got the very deadpan AI voice saying, "Did you know?" And then it talks about why they use walkers in the Imperial military, and it's like, well, yeah, it looks completely impractical, but super imposing and intimidating.
Yeah.
I always fall back on the Family Guy, the Family Guy episode of Empire Strikes Back when the two rebel guys like, "Hey, you think we'll be all right?" We should be fine unless they've got like giant mechanical camels or something. And hey, mechanical camels.
I will say this, and I've said this before on the show. The way in Mandalorian, the way they describe the Imperial Walker, the two-legged, the ATST, made it the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Like the way
red tactical lights coming through the viewports.
The red well, not just that, but the way Gina Carano's character describes, like when she's talking to the villagers, and she basically says, "No, you don't understand. These things, I've seen these things take out an entire squad. You do not want to mess with this. Leave now." You know, that made it seem even more. But anyway, we're not talking about ATSTs. Garrett, who are we talking about today? If
we're doing a Garrett Crave, and we're talking, I'm just going to say it, Chewbacca on this. We are talking about the Wookiee himself for Wookiee Wednesday this week.
Wookiee Wednesday. I like it.
I was researching the puns today.
So yeah, I mean, Chewie, he's not considered part of the Holy Trinity, but he's one of the main. I mean,
he's definitely one of the main characters. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a needlessly speciesist stance to take to hold that Chewie's not one of the main trilogy. Just the statement of trilogy itself. Why do they have to be humans? I think Chewbacca contributes more to the storyline than R2D. Well, maybe not R2D, more than C-3PO does.
Yeah,
this is true. True. Although C-3PO does act as a translator for R2D2.
Which always confused me. With all of the technology available and present in the astromech, why do they not get Galactic Basic? Like, it seems like it's a relatively simple thing to add.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wouldn't you?
Maybe they do.
That said, if anybody wondered why I think Chewbacca is one of the main characters, well, I'll give you 3 whys, one for each one in the word Kashyyyk. He is the only competent mechanic aboard the Millennium Falcon. Thank you very much. He is arguably the bravest member of the troop, and also I think the one with the most heart. I mean, when Luke takes a shot, Han takes a shot. Like it hurts. But Chewie feels some real. It's like when you step on a dog's paw. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry, buddy. It hurts more. I think to see him go. One thing I don't care for in Chewbacca and really all the Wookiee design, Star Wars has a decades-long history of nothing has a snout, right? Like going back to Chewbacca, I don't like the monkeyish face. I wanted him to have more of a muzzle to him, and that carries through up to the Fathiers in the Last Jedi. Why does everything have to have a monkey face? I think I'd like to see more of a schnoz on these things.
I think because it makes it look more alien. I mean, think about the description of aliens going back all the way to like the 1940s and 50s. They don't have any kind of discernible nose. It makes them look foreign. It makes them look more alien, just for lack of a better word.
That's true.
But I mean, think about this though. Like, I mean, you look from a biological, physiological perspective, you look at a character or like a species like the Wookiees, and they the closest thing that we have to compare them to are dogs, essentially, and they are they would essentially be a brachiocephalic dog, like pugs or Shih Tzus or chows. I mean, in fact, they're more closely related to chows. If you've seen that meme on social media of Chewbacca after he's been shaved because of like head lice or something, like he looks terrifying, like Tom Selleck without a mustache.
Oh,
and the very wrinkly face. So I would assume long-haired chow.
You mentioned the dog analogy. I like, although in reverse. I'm sure you've seen the. I guess it's a meme, but the fan theory that Chewbacca or Han is Chewie's second dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Han is the dog. Yeah.
Wookiees have an average lifespan of 400 years and don't age over a span of 50. So once they hit 50, they're kind of done until they turn into a horrible underbite gray monster like Itchy is in the holiday special.
Hey,
but I was saying it's interesting.
Here is not thrilled about that.
Wookiees are so commonly used, seen in mechanical roles, and you wouldn't think with those paws they'd be that dexterous. But Chewie's, like I say, one of the best organic mechanics we see in the series. I think.
What I think is really interesting is you look at the fact that Wookiees are supposed to be some of the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, and yet they live one of the most primitive down to Kashyyyk lifestyles possible. I mean, their whole aesthetic is a naturalistic vibe. I mean, they had a home tree before the Na'vi made it cool.
Yeah.
And shortly after the Ewoks did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I learned researching for this episode that Wookiees have retractable claws. Didn't know that. Which they use for climbing, like a cat.
Yeah.
Although it does say that using them for any other purpose would be a violation of Wookiees, the Wookiees code of honor.
Yeah.
Come on, you're 7 feet tall. You've got claws. You're not allowed to use.
Well, I kind of understand that, though. I mean, think about this. Okay, the Jedi use a lightsaber, a device that's meant to maim, dismember, kill. And to be honest, the physics of it, like if you were to stab someone through the gut with a lightsaber, it wouldn't just impale them. It would actually cause their entire body to explode because that's how physics works. All right, because we're just a pressurized meat suit. But the
There's
Jedi
the t-shirt right there.
The Jedi train for years to master these lightsaber skills in hopes that they don't have to use them for combat. And they not only do that, but they temper their natural impulse to use this powerful weapon to just hack down their enemies. Now, you apply that kind of mentality to the Wookiees who live this naturalistic lifestyle, and rather than giving into their baser impulses, they have made it a cultural mora to not use their claws because to do so, to maim another living creature, is barbaric. And for a species that looks like a Sasquatch, they would rather be known for their intellect and for their cultural norms rather than their strength and their barbarism.
I like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of fan theories, I read one that posited that the Sasquatch legend was based on a Wookiee stranded on our planet.
That's based on that's actually a comic.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a comic where
I'm embarrassed I never saw that one.
Yeah, where Han crash lands in the Pacific Northwest, and he ends up being killed by natives, and the Chewie runs off into the woods. And,
out of focus, though.
Yeah. And then it fast forwards to like the 1940s, and he's discovered by Indiana Jones.
Oh, that's great. That compares right in with Raiders of the Lost Ark having 3PO and R2-D2 in the hieroglyphs.
And you start hearing about the legends of the Sasquatch, and it's Chewbacca.
Well, you guys know that there's a conspiracy theory that who was it? It was there's a whole conspiracy about Han Solo and Indiana Jones and the guys who were in Empire Strikes Back, who played Admiral Ozzel and the dude running the AT-AT at the beginning of Empire, because both of them are in The Last Crusade. The guy piloting the AT-AT plays Donovan, the financier for Indiana Jones.
Funny.
And the guy who played Ozzel plays Hitler in that. Sorry, the former Chancellor of Germany.
Funny mustache man.
Yes.
Interesting.
And like the whole thing.
Veers.
Pretty good. I never heard that one.
General Veers. That was the AT-AT commander. General
and
Veers.
It also ties in. It also ties in. I think it's Patriot Games, because Harrison Ford and James Earl Jones are in that, playing Jack Ryan and Admiral Greer, respectively.
I do like any theory that posits that all movies take place within the same continuity.
Unless it's a Zack Snyder film.
Along the lines of after Mace Windu fell out the window of 500 Republica, he actually went to Earth and hid out in Louisiana until he chained Wednesday Addams to a radiator.
That makes sense.
But back to the topic at hand, I always think it's interesting. Now, I'm not a super fan of Chewbacca as a character. I like him; he's there, but I wasn't pretending to be Chewbacca or whatever. But for a character that speaks not one word of English throughout the saga, he has really captured the hearts of a lot of our fandom. How do you guys feel about him? Do you sense that same sort of affection?
I do. I think he's one of those characters. Like, I don't think you're going to find many people that are, when you list, favorite Star Wars characters, that I think he's going to be near the top, but I don't think for many people he's going to be the favorite character. I mean, when you got characters like Luke Skywalker, like Darth Vader, like Han Solo, but I do think he's got this. People have this affection for him. He's a good sidekick character. I mean, despite what the fan theories say, that's basically his role. Is he's the sidekick to Han.
Yeah.
He's a co-pilot. He's
mechanic.
He's a mechanic. In many ways, until Luke comes along, he's Han's moral compass. He kind of keeps Han, from veering too far off to the criminal.
Funny you mention where I really do like Chewie is as he's portrayed in the Solo movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When we first meet him in the mud pit and Solo saves him. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I agree. I think what I really thought was interesting about that whole introduction, because really our first introduction to Chewbacca canonically is chronologically it's A New Hope, which we'll be reviewing next week.
Yeah.
But canonically it's Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
Because he's there at the Battle of Kashyyyk with Yoda and Tarful, who's one of their chieftains, and he and Tarful help Yoda escape. So it's kind of cool that he has that tie-in, and while like nowadays using something like that would be considered nostalgia bait in a film, it wasn't one of those things that was portrayed or depicted as, hey, you're going to see this character. It was a nice little nod to what has come before.
Mm-hmm.
While tying it into these prequel stories. But the thing I really appreciate about that is that there's this gap of time. What was it, 10 years between Revenge of the Sith and Solo?
Mm-hmm.
And in that decade span, Chewbacca goes from being a free, independent Wookiee to being imprisoned and enslaved by the Empire on a planet that's not his own, which begs the question, because we see this we see this throughout canon, whether it's in the EU, whether it's in the books, and especially we see this in the Clone Wars series. The Trandoshans are constantly trying to find ways of capturing and enslaving and selling Wookiees on the black market.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me wonder what the Empire did to get their hands on a Wookiee.
Yeah. Well, and you see this. I mean,
destroyed the whole planet.
Yeah. If you watch through not just Solo, but throughout like Bad Batch and especially Rebels, you see, and even through stories and legend and stuff like that, Wookiees were known for being slaves to the Empire. I mean, it was a very common thing to see Wookiee slaves, which also begs the question of how was for a race, as you pointed out, Brian, that was so technologically advanced and so good at mechanics, and so powerful, just physically powerful, how was the Empire able to subjugate them so fully like that?
Inhibitor chips, among others.
Yeah.
There was a mass roundup of young Wookiees, which is a big motivator.
Mm-hmm.
So and you'll do a lot to ensure that your kid will survive, even if you might never see them again. Of course, the Empire killed them anyway, but that was a major lever that the Empire used against Kashyyyk. They also burned much of the forest down, so the Wookiees kind of didn't have much else to do. They basically just broke the planet's spirit. Mm-hmm. Now there were repeated uprisings, but there's only so many times you can rise up and be bombarded from orbit before you're like, all right, maybe later, guys. Like let's see what we can do from the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the kind of the interesting thing is like I haven't read, like I said, I've never read many of the books, but my encounters with Wookiee culture and Kashyyyk actually derive from what I've seen in video games, and Kashyyyk is actually a playable location in both The Force Unleashed and in Jedi Fallen Order, And what's really interesting is you actually, especially in the Force Unleashed, you actually play Kashyyyk from two different perspectives. The first one is a prologue that you can only play on a new game, on a new game save, and the other one is a secondary mission when you're playing as Starkiller. But in the prologue, you play as Vader walking through Kashyyyk, going through a Wookiee city in search of Jedi, which is a really fun experience for anybody who's ever wanted to play as Vader. But then you go back as Starkiller, and it's something like 20 years later, or close to it, just before the rebellion's really formed up and going against the Death Star plans, and you go through and you are saving Wookiees from being held on their own planet by the Empire. You do something similar in Fallen Order, because in Fallen Order, you see the Empire has been trying to subjugate and dominate the planet by replacing the greenery with mechanized buildings and infrastructure. And you are going through the environment. You're actually there on two different missions, expanding your understanding, and it's really a neat experience to see the flora and the fauna and to encounter that, but to also get the opportunity to save these Wookiees from Imperial hold.
I think it's interesting that the Wookiees are held up as such a universally chaotic good race. There's not a lot of variety. They're all just good. It's like I liken them to like Native Americans in older American cinema, where they're just always in touch with the land and wise and noble. And Chewbacca is no exception to that. And while we are specifically talking about Chewbacca, I do feel like we have to give Black Krrsantan a shout out here. An evil Wookiee in all of the saga.
I wouldn't say he's evil. I would say he's if you're going about using the D&D character pattern, your typical Wookiee is going to be chaotic good, but I would say he's more lawful
neutral,
maybe lawful neutral or chaotic neutral. But
he was a pretty good bounty hunter. I could go with the.
But he would also be lawful evil. Yes. He does bad things, but he works within the boundaries of the law.
Yeah,
I just think it's funny that. And we always hear about Wookiees tearing people's arms off when they get mad, but all we ever see is these kind Wookiees who are good, good and decent people. Krrsantan, by the way, the only Wookiee who turned himself into the Trandoshans. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm kind of bored here. I want to go fight in your gladiatorial slave pits for a little while, just for a lark.
Yeah,
why not?
Something that we kind of talked about this before we started our recording, but. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll notice that our name tags and everything are all kind of grayed out. Normally, we have thematic banners. Our usual banner is a Rebellion orange. Unfortunately, the technology that we're using is hindered by the fact that we do not have a reliable mechanic. So, Chewbacca, this is your fault.
Yeah.
I do. While we're just talking about Chewie, I do have to shout out. I think I've mentioned this previously, but the bowcaster that Chewbacca uses. I've really gone into this, and tell me if I'm wrong, guys, and folks listening at back at home. Everybody shot with the bowcaster is knocked back until they hit an obstruction. The force of the blast takes them down, and they just keep sliding until they hit a wall, and they do not get up again. Kylo Ren's the only character we see in the saga get shot with that bowcaster and survive it. So and I think we talked about this previously, Garrett, because I remember you mentioned Han was like, "Oh, I like this thing."
Yeah.
But I think the bowcaster is one of my favorite tropes of Star Wars, which is medieval weaponry with a sci-fi twist. You've got the IG units in the Clone Wars riding speeder bikes and jousting with lances. your lightsabers, obviously, but like the laser crossbow is really a nice touch. I think that's awesome.
And the fact that it shoots a bolt.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
As a D&D kid, even before I encountered Star Wars, that was good for me. That's exactly what sealed the deal for me in Star Wars is, oh, there's a Death Knight and there's swords and by the way, crossbow.
Also, just piggybacking on the gaming talk from earlier, I've been playing recently. You can on the Switch you can buy the original versions of Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and Jedi Academy, and one of the weapons in there is the bowcaster.
Nice.
And it is just as powerful as
The Can way you buy Masters of Teras Kazi? That was always a fun Star Wars game for me.
Yeah.
Not ringing any bells?
We should do a whole thing just on video games. Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I'm down.
So, I mean, the first time you see Chewie, you meet him before we meet Han, because it's Chewie that Obi-Wan is talking to at the bar.
That's true.
Oh yeah,
he's the one who's making the deal.
Now who has good relations with the Wookiees, huh?
Yeah.
Wookiees like a Jedi. What can I say? The Jedi are in tune with the Force, nature, and all.
Well, and here's what this just popped in my mind. If Chewie knew Yoda, and they had good, have good relations with the Wookiees.
They had relations, yeah.
Shouldn't have Chewbacca have known? Wow. I'm not even going to.
I tried not to do it. I tried. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna gloss right over that.
I'm 8. I can't stop it.
Yeah. That Chewie should have known Obi-Wan.
I think he did. I mean, that's got to be.
I'm researching. Hold on.
That's one of those gray areas.
Yes. Part of the Star Wars databank on StarWars.com, it says Chewbacca knew Obi-Wan Kenobi before the events of A New Hope. They were introduced by someone named Bo Sheck.
Of course they were.
Because Bo knows.
Well, and that's one of those gray areas where I feel like they had to write that in. I mean, obviously, they don't say that Kenobi didn't know Chewie in A New Hope, but it's there's you can see, I don't know, you can fill in the blanks on behalf of the movie, but that's like, Kenobi acts like he doesn't know R2 at all, and of course he does. They spent 3 movies working together. So.
Although I do seem to recall owning a droid. He was actually giving R2-D2 autonomy as a being.
Have you seen the meme where
technically he never did own R2. R2 was Anakin's droid.
R2 is Padme's droid.
Ooh,
this is true. That's true.
Noted.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of the audiobook of episode 3, and there's actually some discussion given to why our Anakin always gets that droid.
I believe R5 was Obi-Wan's droid.
Yeah,
R5.
And again, we can do some work for the movies because there's just things that go by the wayside when you write 1, 2, 3, 20 years after 4, 5, 6. But I think it adds more to the story thinking that Kenobi and Chewie, even if they knew each other in passing, they are veterans. They serve together. Yeah. And they have and with that, you can build in, there's a shared tragedy there too. They both knew probably several Jedi.
Yeah. I think it's definitely an Empire where you really start to see Chewie's personality really shine. Like you get glimpses of it in A New Hope. But it is an Empire where you see, like him getting frustrated with working on the which is one of my favorite scenes, where he's on top of the Millennium Falcon and I think Han yells something to me like, "Rrr!" He's like, okay, fine.
I like the banter between the two a lot for that exact thing.
Yeah, and that really comes to fruition.
Some of the
starts to come in.
Some great comic relief comes in Star Wars when there is a conversation that the audience only understands half of it.
Yes,
I mean there a lot of almost every scene with Chopper of Rebels thrives on that because we don't know what Chopper's saying, but everything he says sounds obscene. Yeah. He reminds me of Kenny from South Park, by the way. He has an orange hood. You can't understand him. It's always filthy. Everything he says sounds like. Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty cool.
I think you have a valid point there, Brian, because you just look at it from the comedic side of things. Like it's kind of funny when you have characters like where the two characters can understand each other, but the audience can only understand one of them, because then you have this great opportunity to apply like a complete misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. And then like the character that can't be understood is just like they respond as if, wait, that's not what I said. What are you doing? That's the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite bits like that, a comedian I like was speaking publicly at an awards event, and he saw that there was a sign language translator, and he said with a straight face, "Good evening, everyone. Please help. I'm being forced to translate this against my will. If you can understand this, please let me know." And the sign language just cracking up. But no, I think you're right, John Mark. Some of the best conversations between Han and Chewie happen in Empire, and it creates.
And not just conversations, but just like frustrated Chewbacca is hilarious. Like him just getting fed up with all of that bull crap.
Right.
Like when he's trying to put C-3PO together, and he's just like,
right. And who among us? I think we've all built some Legos in our day and felt that way.
Of course, you had the famous, I'd rather kiss a Wookiee. And Chewie just got looking like, okay.
Yeah, Chewie's down. He's on board. But that sort of thing lays the groundwork for the tragic scene when Han dies. And you see the pain in Chewie's inflection. Of course, it's not Peter Mayhew behind the mask, but Mayhew really laid
and you get a glimpse
emotional
of that.
Groundwork.
You get a glimpse of that pain when, Han goes out to find Luke. And they have to close the door, and they have to leave Han out there.
And when Han goes to the carbonite, Chewie loves him.
That. Yeah. I mean, that's two times where, as far as Chewie is concerned, this might be the last time I see my best friend. Yeah, his dog died.
You also get some of that personality coming through in a different way in Return of the Jedi, because in the first, when we first are introduced to Chewbacca, he looks a little bit different. He looks a little haggard. There's this idea of how the mighty has fallen. Like he's like Jabba actually teases him, calling him the mighty Chewbacca. He's got this reputation that's preceding him, and he's captured by a bounty hunter. Mm-hmm. After doing all this to fight the Empire, and then he goes from being a fighter in that, and then they show up on Endor, and the first thing he does is he gets them trapped by the Ewoks because he's hungry. And it's like he goes full, like it's almost like he goes full Yogi Bear on everybody. Like he just walks in, he's like, I smell something delicious, I'm gonna go check it out. And they're like, no, don't do that. No, it'll be fine. And they're just all taken up into the trees. And it's hilarious because, like, I'm assuming, given the fact that he's like, again, going back to physiology, he's probably a carnivore, at least some kind of omnivorous bear-like creature.
Wookiees are omnivores,
right? And so, like, after probably eating fake processed food, whatever they serve on starships, for however long, and being on the run for however long without any guaranteed food. He's starving.
Yeah.
I mean, he's what, 7.5, 8 feet tall. He's wait, they use metric. So 2 meters tall, with all that strength and all that energy that he's burning, he's got to consume the calories. And so, like, the first chance he gets at a decent meal, he's going to go for that.
Yeah, and the fact that Han's reaction is one of like, oh, of course. Like, this is something, not necessarily that this has happened before, but something similar to this has happened before where his stomach has gotten him in trouble. The fact, like, I just love that's, like, it's not something that it seems like completely out of, Han wasn't that surprised that happened.
Right.
That Chewie would do that. And I mean, this is the first time. I mean, it's an Empire where you really see Chewie. I mean, you've seen a little bit of Chewie in action as far as fighting, but this is the first time where you really see him more in his element, like in the trees, running around. And I love the fact that they add the when he goes to
very Tarzanish.
I would like to see, even just on a TV show, I'd like to see Chewbacca get a Vader hallway scene. Because Chewie can just wreck shop when he needs to, and we don't really get to see him cut loose.
I mean, we get a little bit of that in
just we know the strength.
Last Jedi? I mean, Force Awakens when they're on Starkiller Base?
There's that, but we also get a little bit of his strength in Revenge of the Sith when they're battling the droid army on Kashyyyk.
Yeah, that's true.
It's almost blink if you miss it.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of it, just because of what we've kind of the stories that we've heard of Wookiee's strength of being able to rip arms off of people and stuff like that.
Gundarks too.
You'd almost have to do it with droids, just because if you did it with like people, it would almost have to be a rated R movie.
Oh yeah,
because of literally ripping someone apart. You could get away with it more with droids or with an alien, where you don't necessarily have that type of gore and that type of violence. That
I mean, that's why Lucas puts stormtroopers in helmet
hallway scene. Yeah, I mean, you kind of get that same vibe as far as that brutality. I think with the Darth Maul hallway scene at the end of Clone Wars, where he's decapitating people and chopping arms off, and anyway,
you do get a little bit.
Oh, we gotta do a Maul episode.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Can you imagine the smell of hitting a Wookiee with a lightsaber? Dude, so much burning hair.
Well, I mean, let's talk. I mean, Wookiee Jedi in general. I mean, that whole idea of a Wookiee Jedi is just.
There have not been many. I think Wikipedia lists like 3 or 4, counting the Gungi or whatever his name was.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah, I know there's a few in Legends, and I think there have been a couple in.
There are several notable Wookiee Jedi in Star Wars, including Gungi, the youngling who appears in Clone Wars, Buriaga,
and Bad Batch.
And Bad Batch, yeah. A Jedi Knight who appears in a Han Solo and Chewbacca comic, Kelnaka, the Jedi Master who appears in Acolyte, Kursish, that's an awful name, a Wookiee Jedi who appears in a recent Yoda comic miniseries, Master Arkhoth, also a terrible name, a wise mentor to many other Jedi, including Lily Tora Asi. He was featured in the manga series The Edge of Balance, and then Tyvaka, a Wookiee Jedi. Other Wookiee Jedi include Kirlaka and Lobaka. I remember Lobaka.
I remember Lobaka.
Man, they have a lot of Akkas in their names. I'm really curious how that gets pronounced in Shriwook.
Fairly close to that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you've read the Timothy Zahn novels. There's a character, and I cannot remember his name, that is a Wookiee who speaks Basic, and the whole thing is that the reason he can speak Basic is he has a speech impediment.
That's funny because current
that
canon
allows
says
him
Wookiees cannot pronounce, can't speak galactic.
that
basic.
allows him to be able to speak basic.
Poor bugger.
So he's
and he was made fun of as a child, but it helped him as he got older because he's able to actually communicate with people who could not speak Surwook.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. I do like the fact that at least in the new canon they have not killed off Chewbacca, because that was one of the worst things that Legends did, was killing.
And
Chewbacca.
Just in a ham-handed way. I mean, it's become a joke now.
Well, and what's interesting is he dies. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the previous EU canon, but prior to Disney, he died by getting sandwiched between two collapsing planets. Right?
He had a moon dropped on him.
Right.
It was during the Using Vong War, and they basically, I don't remember what exactly happened because I read about half those books and was just like, make it stop. And because they basically used, for those of you who haven't read that, they basically
if I may,
Using Vong as a reset.
It takes place in New Jedi Order Vector Prime, written by R.A. Salvatore, which explains why there's drow elves in it. Chewbacca died to save Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, Anakin Solo, and in order to save him, Chewbacca had to sacrifice himself. Unlike exploding on a ship, though, Chewbacca's death was inadvertently somewhat more comical, with an entire moon crashing down upon him. Yeah. So, yeah.
But
blame it on Anakin, as ever.
Yeah. But basically the whole storyline, for those of you who weren't around during that time, was used to make it basically as a almost like a reset for the Star Wars universe. It was almost like Star Wars version of the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline.
It was like if Rob Liefeld wrote a Star Wars book.
Yeah, we're gonna reset everything.
Yeah, only with better drawn feet.
More pockets, please. More buckles. And let's completely rewrite the way Star Wars Force works. You know what? I that's another episode we need to do is Brian says, and another thing, and yells about the Yuuzhan Vong for 47 minutes.
Only if you can do it sounding like Uncle from Jackie Chan Adventures. One more thing.
I would have. I feel like I would become problematic with that. That's why I don't do my Watto impression anymore.
What, you don't want to sound like a dirty Italian?
It's 2 degrees off racist. Watto's like halfway Tatooine and halfway really bad 1940s stereotype.
Come on. He just sounds like a very Italian used car salesman.
No, I do have to say this though, that the Yuuzhan Vong are, to me, if the planet of Hot Topic invaded the galaxy, and every single one of them is voiced by Skeet Ulrich and Fairuza Balk. They're just so 90s. I can't stand it. And for the D&D players out there, they are 100% Space Githyanki. That's just all they are. Their entire like their whole visual look. I wrote a fake. I like to do these fake Star Wars facts, dubious Star Wars facts, where I just make stuff up, but I phrase it in a believable way. And I list a copyright infringement lawsuit that the Githyanki brought against the Yuuzhan Vong. Hey, that's our shtick.
Yeah. Wow.
So not that it's on the topic of Chewbacca or anything, but that's kind of my shtick. So there we go. All in all, I gotta say, I think while he's not, admittedly, he's not, as you say, one of the main trinity up there. Chewie's as much a mascot of the saga as R2. Like there's throw pillows with the bandolier. Like he's one of the more recognizable characters in all of arguably all of science fiction. And I think what he brings to the saga is irreplaceable.
I would say he's one of those characters that transcends pop culture. He's a transcendent character that even people who don't know, who never really watched Star Wars, will know Chewbacca. And I think there's a few characters like that in Star Wars, and that's what makes Star Wars such a cultural phenomenon, is when you have people who may never have seen Star Wars, but they know Darth Vader, they know Chewbacca, You know, they know these characters even if they have never actually watched the movie themselves.
Yeah.
Like you show a picture and you'll be like, oh yeah, Chewie, that Chewie guy.
I kind of like what I would like to see, because Marvel's been doing some Chewbacca comics lately. What I would really like to see is a mini series, no more than 3 or 4 episodes of Chewbacca's adventures in between the events of I would say A New Hope through Return of the Jedi. Maybe a few things after.
Yeah.
But they don't even have to be serialized episodes. Like it could just be like quick 15-minute thing. Like they did something like that with Marvel for Groot.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Iron Groot.
They're little shorts. And I thought those, okay, you know what? They weren't story-wise, they're not great, but they were fun. They were whimsical and they were cool. Like I would love to see, like they could do something really cool, especially now that they've got the volume. They could do something with Chewbacca returning and visiting Kashyyyk.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing,
exploring the landscape.
One thing, and I think this is something where they've done it with the Star Trek universe too, and I think it could work with Star Wars too. They have these things called short treks, where they're short little 5-minute mini episodes, and they're based like I think they've done 2 or 3 seasons of them, and they're all over the Star Trek universe of different things. So like one of them is a thing where it's Spock and Number One from Stranger Worlds, Melissa Romaine's character.
Yeah.
Stuck in a turbo lift together.
Rebecca.
And they're just bantering back and forth, and getting to know each other. They have a couple other ones that are, but they're just like these little 5-minute episodes that they don't add anything to any ongoing story, but they're just good world building, character building things to get people to understand these characters more. And Star Wars could do stuff like that with all kinds of different things, whether it be Chewbacca, Mandalorian, just little one-off. And you don't have to, because in the short treks, they don't keep it just with live action. They have a couple that are animated, and they're animated in the what's really cool,
the original style,
and the original animated series style. And you could do that with Star Wars. You could do a couple of animated episodes.
I've said it before, but Star Wars needs a Lower Deck series.
Yeah. That would be fun.
A canonical comedy, as I would be a huge shot in the arm for the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I think so too.
By the way, on that topic, how are we liking Skeleton Crew?
I enjoyed it. It was fun.
The first episode, I liked how it just kind of launches you. Like, I didn't think we needed so much of reading at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like how it set the tone, but the thing I really liked about it is the fact that like the opening felt very much like the opening of A New Hope.
Yeah.
With ship tactics and the whole thing. I was very aware that the pirate captain at the beginning is definitely Jude Law. I mean, like if you know his cadence and the way he presents himself, it's obviously him. I'm curious to see how the rest of the story plays out.
I was hoping for a Carrie Elway's cameo as the Dread Pirate Roberts.
That would have been awesome.
I do like I like the bus or the tram pilot was the same droid from Star Tours.
Yes,
noticed that. And then the little ferryman in the second episode was one of the creatures from the Battle for Endor.
Yes, we talked about. I was on the one of the other shows recently, and here on Feast of Phantoms, and we talked. That was one of the things we talked about. One thing I appreciate. I mentioned this too, was how, and I think good science fiction can do this, where you have a setting that looks familiar but different. Like when they're on their home planet at Atten, it looks so much like suburbia, like Earth suburbia, but yet it's just slightly different. Like
well,
just a little bit, you're just like.
And here's something that is weird: is why does like any planet on the Star Wars universe need roads when you've got hover vehicles?
I know, because the beasts of burden that pull those hover vehicles need a pathway to walk on.
Yeah, but there were.
Tell me I'm wrong. Every Star Wars franchise media has at least one hover sled pulled by some giant lizard or goats or whatever.
Right, but
I love that aspect of Star Wars.
Those are more in the rural backwater areas, not in a suburban landscape like this. There is no beast of burdens on Ad-Atten.
Yeah.
But what's
Ad-Atten.
But
is that where they grow up?
What's interesting though is, I'm really curious as to why this planet is not recognized.
So I've heard a couple of theories. The people at Screen Crush, one of the big theories they have is that this is actually Exegol.
Okay.
And that's why it's been hidden, is like half the planet is like, or that it's somehow connected to, they're doing something for Project Necromancer without them knowing about it. And that's why it's been hidden so long. Hidden is so because it's got this nefarious plan, and that's why no one can leave the planet, no one can go past the barrier. But that's one of the theories, is that this is actually Exegol.
It would be.
I don't know if I believe that,
but it is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. That fits there.
It would be weird though, because why would they allow for a kid like Wim to be so super obsessed with the Jedi?
Yeah,
and wanting to explore and be.
I mean, maybe they're using that because the Empire's done this before, where in other despotic governments have used this before, where they use this hope of this idea of like, oh, there's hope to help keep them under thumb, where hope is just out of reach. Oh, there are these legends there, but they're not real, or So I mean, that could be it.
The other thing is, what I find interesting is that Wim's dad is the only character in the galaxy who wears bifocals. Did you notice that he's the only person? And I'm not talking like a cyber visor like KB or like the cyborgs from Cloud City. He's quite literally the first character that we have seen wearing glasses.
Yeah.
But does he use paper? That's the real technological wonder.
Yeah. I know, right?
Nobody uses paper.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to this. I liked it. The second episode was a little slow for me, but I'm really liking how it plays out. I'm just hoping though that they will keep the focus on the ensemble nature of the cast.
Yeah, I agree.
Because like so far, the first character we're introduced to is Wim, and he feels like he should be the protagonist. But if I'm really hoping that Disney doesn't pull a Disney and make Fern like the breakout girl boss character, because that has become a trend in recent projects, and it's really obnoxious.
Yeah, I do think that you're going to start seeing, what is the character? The elephant boy. I cannot think of him.
Neil
plushies. You're going to start seeing Neil plushies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And did you see the deep cut of the holiday special?
No.
When they are.
Yes, I did.
When Neil's brothers, when he's peeking in the window, and Neil's brothers are watching the little hologram show, that is taken directly from the holiday special.
Is it really?
It is exactly the same.
Lumpy watches.
Yeah, it's the same show Lumpy watches. Exactly, even the same actors. They just took the animation.
I believe that was one of the first
from the
performances
holiday
of
zhuzhed it up a little bit to make it look better.
I think that was one of the first performances of Cirque du Soleil.
I do want to say I'm really excited for this show overall, because I mean, we've seen what John Watts can do as a director for the 3 Spider-Man films he's done.
Yeah.
Those were all enjoyable. We've got the Daniels, who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. They've got a very good eye for detail and cinematography.
That was a great movie.
But I mean, Bryce Dallas Howard is coming back. You know, she's directed episodes of The Mandalorian, and I think she did at least one episode of Boba Fett. We've got Lee Isaac Chung, who directed Twisters this summer. But the episodes that I was kind of a little bored with episode 2, just because of how slow it was paced. But episode 3 of Skeleton Crew is directed by David Lowery, and David Lowery is the guy who did The Green Knight from 2021, and that movie was an epic scale film. Like, if you haven't seen it, like the cinematography, the color palette, the use of mostly practical effects, is so well done for an art house A24 production fantasy film.
Yeah,
because that's what it was.
One thing. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes next.
Yeah, one thing I liked is we first saw the trailers. Of course, the first thing we probably all thought was, this is Goonies in space, which it is. They've got a lot of that elements to it.
In space.
But now that they're off planet, I'm getting a different vibe from it. When they were on that pirate planet, I didn't think Pirates of the Caribbean. I thought of
Cutthroat Island? Don't say Cutthroat Island.
No, not Cutthroat Island. Treasure Island.
Treasure Island.
It's very Treasure Island.
Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet. Yeah. But I'm also
an underrated film. I love Treasure Planet.
I'm also seeing a little bit of, obviously the Stranger Things vibe. You got that going on. You got, of course, we mentioned, Goonies in space.
Goonies.
I see Flight of the Navigator.
Yes.
I see a lot of very Flight of that. And even E.T. Even E.T. The road, the neighborhood that they live on looks very much like the E.T. Even the point of he's got the bicycle with the basket, but it's in the back and not the front. As they're going through, which I love.
Nice nod there, since E.T.
So far, my favorite character is, I like the girl with the vice. It's going to be KB, and I like the fact that she comes off as being very much a character who is very insular. She's very, she seems like she's a character that is very not. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, she likes to keep to herself.
Yeah, she's definitely that. But like, I mean, you look at the 4 characters; they are definitely like the 4 main characters from Goonies, because you've got Wim is Mikey.
Yeah.
You've got Neil, who is essentially Chunk. Yeah. And I've seen an artist rendering of Neil doing the Truffle Shuffle. Fern is Mouth, the Corey Feldman character, and then you've got KB, who's essentially Data.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like the way that there's little character, like, anytime, like when she has it up until she has to interact with people, until there's someone, and then she puts it down and the visor comes down. Like, that's almost like her coping mechanism. Yeah. Like, absolutely. I have to be around people. I need something to. The visor comes down, because he only does it when she has to interact with people.
Well, I confess I have not watched it yet. I've been following the news about it, but I've wanted to let it get a couple episodes ahead. So it's good to hear you guys are appreciating it. I'll probably have to check it out.
This is probably the first time I've been excited for a Star Wars show in a while.
And this is one thing that gave me hope for this show is, anytime like a new show comes out, I always go through after I watch it to see what other people are saying about it. And there's always those people that are, no matter what it is, are going to be dogging it, saying negative things about it just because. And there hasn't been a lot of negative talk on it, even from the channels that would normally be the more negative channels. There either has been nothing said or they've been praising it. Things could change, obviously, as the show progresses. But so far, there doesn't seem to be any type of agenda being pushed. It just seems like a fun adventure show.
And the thing I find very interesting about it is that, like, there are a couple of YouTubers that I really pay attention to. Critical Drinker is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is Snarky J Cosplay.
Yeah,
and I haven't seen anything from her on this, and I probably won't, because she says she's pretty much given up on Star Wars. But Critical Drinker came out last week with a new video, not exactly praising it, but not calling it crap either. And he actually said it was really kind of good, and he hopes that trajectory continues.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are an hour into this. This is one of our longest episodes we've done in a while. So let's kind of wrap things up here. First of all,
talking about Chewbacca.
This is true. And well, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Next week, and I mentioned this earlier in the episode, but we are going to be doing our monthly review. This month, we are talking about A New Hope, the original movie that kicked off everything that we love.
Yes. All right. Well, then, Brian, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you in internet land?
You can find me at the Sith Library and Archives on Facebook, a Sith-based fan page. You can also, if you're a horror fan, you should check out I is for Investigate on wherever you get your podcasts. I am one of the characters on a scripted Lovecraftian horror podcast I think you'll enjoy.
Ooh, fun. All right, what about you, Garrett?
Well, I can be found on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my books, The Archives of the Saint Quran. It's a currently 5-book series, fantasy adventure, dragons, elves, magic, and vampires that don't sparkle. I also talk about my show on YouTube. It's called The Right Way, where we talk about book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I just had an episode, my holiday preview, come out this last Saturday. This coming Saturday, I have a writing workshop that I'm going to be doing from my local library. We're going to be focusing on, it's going to be called Hints and Herrings, focusing on foreshadowing and red herrings. And then I'm also on a new show on Feast of Fandoms called Snackame. We're recording a new episode this Saturday, and that will be up next week.
Awesome. All right. As for us right here, you can, of course, check us out at warthestars1@gmail.com. If you want to email us, our Instagram is @war_of_the_stars1. We are on X at War of the Stars, and of course, our YouTube channel is at WOTS 77. We are, of course, as Garrett mentioned, part of Feast of Fandoms. Check out all the shows on Feast of Fandoms, including myself. Earlier this week, I was on just a second, Cantina Happy Hour. Sorry, guys, I had a brain fart there. Where, of course, we talked about the first 2 episodes of the new Star Wars show. Yeah. Anyway, wow, my brain just had a fart there. Ugh. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you can do so at kofi.com/War of the Stars, or check out our Spreadshirt shop, spreadshirt.com/war-of-stars. Also, we are on Spotify. Just search War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, and you should find us there. Episodes go there live on Thursday. They go on the YouTube channel here on Feast of Fandoms on Wednesday, and then the next day they go live on Spotify on our own War of the Stars channel. So check that out. I do not believe I'm missing anything. Yes, thanks for watching. And as always, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
guys.